Welcome to the Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Nadia Delacruz, founder of the Wayne Dyer Wisdom Community on Facebook and angeltarot.org. This podcast would not be possible without support from loyal fans like you. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. You can get the link for that and more details about this podcast at nadiadelacruz.com. And my guest today went through quite an ordeal in 2020, and not in the way you might expect. After experiencing mysterious symptoms for months, he ended up in the hospital with a cardiac event. While the emergency medical team worked to save his life, he had a near-death experience in the spiritual realm. This experience changed his perspective on life, and he is here to share what he learned with us today. Andrew Thiessen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nadia, for having me.
Andrew! So I want to start this conversation by letting everybody know that you and I are actually good friends. So we met back at the start of 2020, January, in a shamanism group here in Seattle. And then the pandemic moved that group online, so we were seeing each other through Zoom, but it wasn't quite the same. And I knew that you were having some health challenges. Didn't quite know what was going on. And then it was really a shock when in October, I heard that you were unconscious in the hospital, and it was terrifying.
Yes.
But before we get into what happened with all of that and the NDE that you experienced, I'd love it if you could actually give us a little background on your spiritual path prior to all of this.
Wow. My spiritual path. Well, the difficulty, I guess I could say it started at work, to be honest. I can't really explain it other than saying that for some reason, my senses were getting heightened. There was something wrong. Something wasn't quite right. I didn't know if it was my age. Am I going through another men's therapy thing or something, was I having a midlife crisis or something? But at work, I started crying for no reason. I'd be right in the middle of work, typing emails, and the tears would come, and I'm like, why am I crying? I'm not seeing a bad movie or anything, but I was trying to figure out what was going on inside, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Work was going great, home was great, family was great. I didn't understand what it was. And then I started looking on the internet, and I started looking for, what are these symptoms? Is this something men go through, women go through? I was trying to figure out, is this a time in my life when my emotions and my feelings were coming to the surface? Because, you don't sit at work and start bawling your eyes out. Because my coworkers were like, what's going on with Andrew? And it's like, well, nothing. I don't know why I'm crying. So one of my friends that I knew a long time ago in college, her name was Kate, and she was a mystic, was an oracle, an empath. And I didn't understand any of that. I had no clue. But when I was going through this, and I hadn't thought of her for a couple of years, all of a sudden her face appeared in my mind's eye, like, oh, Kate, I wonder if I could go chat with her and figure out kind of what's going on. So I went to her. She, at the end of class, she told me she was a psychic, and I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Psychic,
the first thing, the first thing that came in my mind was Dionne Warwick's 1-800 hotline. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Oh, you're aging yourself, Andrew. That goes way back.
I know. But she was great. She was fantastic. I consider her a friend. And I thought, well, maybe she would understand this. I've tried everything else. I've looked online. I don't know what this is. So I set up an appointment, and I went to see her. And she immediately told me, she said, well, I'm glad you're here. Because she said, some relatives had come through. It's kind of like seeing Meet the Frasers, and you see Matt Fraser on TV, and he starts talking about different things, and your mom is standing here and your dad is standing there, and they're telling. So I'm not used to this, right? I mean, nobody's used to that when you go see that. And that kind of led me down the path to start taking classes, the same class that I started with you.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like my step two. So it was more of, I think, just an awakening of something that I didn't know was really there. I grew up in a very conservative Christian home, but as soon as I left the home, I was kind of on my own, and I really didn't do what I was raised to do, and just worked and worked and worked and all that. And then this happened, so I wasn't sure what was going on. But then I started taking classes and more classes, and then I started, you know, I guess the journey inward is
Mm-hmm.
the best thing I could think of, in discovering myself and discovering people around me, and um, some things about life that started bubbling up to the surface. So, yeah,
So it sounds like maybe your sensitivity levels were increasing. Is that maybe something you felt during
very
this
much.
awakening?
Yep.
So I think that, doing work in the spiritual realm, and I do card readings for those who aren't familiar, um, it's very common for people not to be aware of sort of what's out there. And part of that is not being aware of what we're feeling. And that in order to receive guidance or to do energy work, you have to be in tune with your own feelings and those sensations that come through your body. And I think culturally we're raised to ignore that and not value that and think that we only have five senses and anything beyond that is just woo woo nonsense, right? Or
Yeah.
worse, like fearful devil work or something.
Yes.
But so what I have found is something that I learned from one of my teachers, Kyle Gray, is that you have to be able to feel your feelings and recognize those sensations in your own body in order to receive messages. And so I'm someone who's very sensitive. I always have been, and I thought that that was my greatest weakness. I thought it was something that was wrong with me that I had to overcome. And it took me decades to figure out that what I thought was my greatest weakness was really my biggest strength. And it enables me to see and feel and know things that I think we all can know, but we don't all tune into it. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you started crying at work or having these emotions and these sensations that you couldn't explain. Sometimes people think there's something wrong with their body or they're losing their mind or something, but really you're just expanding your awareness a little bit. And there's a sensitivity that comes with that is sort of a double-edged sword, right? It's the good and the
Yes.
bad. So there's such a stigma now associated with the term empath as like, oh, I'm an empath. That's why I feel so bad and so drained all the time. And like I pick up emotions of other people. But that's just one side of it. Like the other side of it is you have the superpower, right? So
Yes.
I very much value the gifts that come with sensitivity. So I want to acknowledge that for you as you've gone through this path. So when we met, I knew you were kind of new into it, but I definitely felt an energy from you. I felt like there was an opening there, and I was really curious about sort of what your connections were, if that makes sense, and also sort of like where is he headed? Like what is this guy up to? And then you went through like the craziest year that I don't know, some sort of fast forward initiation into the world of spirit. Now, did you have any awareness of like did you believe in spirit? Did you have any awareness of like the energy behind things, or was it really sort of like what you see is all there is in life?
Well, the way I was raised was, that there is, a God, a spirit. Uh, my viewpoint differed from my parents in that I thought that, well, in some areas of the world, he's called Buddha. In some areas of the world, he's called Jesus. And in some areas of the world, he's called something else.
Yeah.
But I just believed that, yeah, there is a spirit force, a life force, and everyone connects to it in their own specific way, unique way, I should say. Um, but I kind of didn't know where or what or why. I kind of thought that the faith that my parents raised me was more from my childhood,
Hmm.
right? But I didn't know that that would carry me through into adulthood and further on. It just might change a little bit, but I kind of didn't pay attention to it. I just kind of was like, oh yeah, whatever. Meet friends, do things on the weekend, go
Yeah.
on trips, get married, find a spouse, the whole thing until this moment. And then I thought, oh, I'm probably having a midlife. I'm doing something. I mean, I don't know what this is. But then after taking classes and understanding that there's a little more to it than that, um, that's when it had a deeper impact on me. And then I started reaching back in my past and understanding, hey, wait a minute, some of the things I went through were for a reason.
Hmm.
And oh, I learned those particular lessons and I got this from, okay, so that's kind of making more sense.
Yeah.
Um, at the time that I had met you, taking the shaman class was really my first baby step. Because when I saw the psychic, she said, well, Andrew, she said, it's like a buffet. She said, try, learning tarot, try Reiki, try learning about shamanism, try learning about, she said, stick your toe into all these different pools and kind of see what resonates with you, what truths that you can learn about yourself. Um, and the breadcrumbs just led me right to that class. It was really
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, so I want to give a shout out to Patrick Corrigan. Patrick, if you're listening, we love you. He is our friendly neighborhood shaman, and a close friend to both of us. And he's the one who's was running that group to bring us deeper into shamanic perspective and journeys and practices and all of that. I'm actually planning on having him on this season, a little bit later. So I'm
Wonderful.
looking forward to that conversation. But so you were talking about like how you were raised and the beliefs from the church and beliefs from your parents. And one thing I wanted to mention is that I feel like one of the drawbacks of many churches is that they put sort of a buffer between you and God. Like there's a middleman,
Right.
that they discourage this sort of direct connection with the divine, that you need to go through your priest or your pastor or whoever, and they're going to interpret God's messages for you. And one thing that I love about earth-based spirituality is that, and shamanism, is it encourages this direct connection, that there's this energy in all of life, that you can receive messages from the animals and the water and the and the rocks, and that we're all one, with all of it. And I think what that does is the whole world can become your church, and that you can
Right.
really connect on a deeper level, one to one. So I'm happy that you're having that experience. I know that a lot of people who were actively involved in a number of different religious organizations, sometimes they have a lot of healing to do when they grow up and step away from that. So what was your belief about what happens when you die prior to this experience?
Wow. Well,
Did you have an opinion on that?
yes. I was one of those little kids that they did not like in Sunday school. I was pretty much sent to the corner almost all the time because I would think through things and some of the things didn't make sense to me. For instance, I was taught when I was a little kid that if you're really good and you follow all the rules, whatever they are, these little rules in the little box that you're in, that you'll get to go to heaven and you'll be in heaven forever and ever 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 and ever. And if you're not and you're bad, then you're going to go to hell forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And I
Forever's a long
thought,
time.
yeah, and that's as a little kid, I thought about that, and I asked my Sunday school teacher. I go, well, I said, that doesn't really make sense to me. And he's like, well, Andrew, what do you mean? And I said, well, let's say that I'm here on Earth, and I was created, and I'm here, and I live for 80 years. So I'm pretty good guy. Every once in a while I tell a lie or I do something I shouldn't, right? But for the most part, I'm pretty good. I can't imagine a spirit or a God for just this much of my existence putting me in hell forever and ever 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 and ever. Compared to the rest of the ever and ever and ever and evers, it didn't make any sense to me. I said, I don't understand that. How could anyone do that? Out of all that time, no, you got to go there because you were bad. It didn't. I said, I don't get it. And he just looked at me like, go stand in the corner. So I always wondered as a little kid, it's kind of like, well, there's got to be something else to this because that doesn't make any sense to me. And I heard about people who had, died and then they came back or they met angels or go to the light, as some people say in the movies and things like that. But I didn't understand. I didn't know where I would go, because I had teaching that said I wouldn't go to a very nice place. But I knew in my heart that I was a good person. And yeah, I did face plants in my life, and we all do. But for the most part, we're pretty good people, right? So I kind of thought, well, at that point, we'll just see. So that's kind of where I was at that time. I was in the wait and see mode
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't know what else to believe or think.
So you believed in forever, you believed in something after this life, but you just couldn't quite figure out maybe what that's going to look like, right?
Yeah,
And to be honest, we're all guessing.
yeah,
Because even those who die a little bit and come back, who knows what happens when you die all the way. And
right.
it's funny because, okay, not haha funny. It's interesting because several years prior, my dad had his heart stopped. He was visiting my sister in Las Vegas. She lives there. And they had just come back from an outing. And he takes like 2 steps into the house and keels over. His heart stops. And
Wow.
she does CPR on him for 10 minutes before the medics came. And then they got his heart going again with the electroshock, whatever that is,
Hmm.
and took him off to the hospital. And then I assume they put him under a medically induced coma. But for days, I didn't know if he was brain dead, what was going on, what was happening. Somehow, one of many miracles that happened in my father's life, he woke up with no damage. And they couldn't believe it. Like, he had no brain damage. He was the same as he always was. They gave him a pacemaker because he had bradycardia, which is low heart rhythm.
Oh, okay.
And that's, I guess, what led to his heart stopping. And so it gave him another, how many years was that? 5 years, maybe? Um, Before he died, like really died. But it's funny because when he came out of that, he was like, you know what? I didn't see anybody. He's like, there was no light, there was no angels. Like, I didn't have any experience. And, my sister used to joke and say, oh, well, that's because it wasn't your time, right? Like, you didn't go that far. You really just stayed here. I knew you were still here. Um, but I guarantee you, when he died in 2019, he had a very different experience because um, I felt that. That's a story for another time, but I felt that.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's talk about what happened in 2020. So,
Oh boy.
when you ready? Everybody ready? So what what were you feeling like? What was going on with your health? Because I think it was in the summer that I'd heard from Patrick that like, oh, Andrew might not be at class today or something's going on, and we're like, is it COVID? Like, what? I mean, anything that happened in 2020, everybody's like, is it COVID? Right? So
That's exactly what we were thinking too. So what had happened is we had gone grocery shopping, and got some food and lunch and dinner, and that night, um, I think it was between lunch and dinner actually, but I did have dinner. That would be after dinner. Um, for some reason, I was doing both. We thought it was food poisoning. And so it was really bad. I mean, if you've ever had food poisoning,
It's
it
bad.
is not
Yeah.
fun.
No, that's the
And
worst.
so I thought, okay. What I didn't know is that at the time it was a silent heart attack.
Oh my gosh. Who would think that vomiting and diarrhea is a symptom of a heart attack? I certainly wouldn't.
I thought, oh, that was bad hamburger or bad sushi because
Yeah.
that's what I had. And I thought, oh, that's really bad. But I didn't know that at the time. And so after that episode, what had happened was um, I had shortness of breath. I could only walk 25 feet before I was completely out of breath. I couldn't lay flat. I had to sleep sitting up in a chair. So I would sleep in the living room on a big cushy chair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a fever for a few days and then it went away. And we didn't know if that was part of like food poisoning
Yeah.
or if that was COVID. So it's 2020. We're thinking COVID. It's June. We're like, oh, how did I get it? Because at that time, everybody was not going anywhere. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, not even ordering food out,
Yeah.
but you had to go get groceries.
Mm-hmm.
So you get your mask, you get your
Hazmat
antiseptic.
suit. Yeah.
Yes, you go to the grocery store and you don't even look at people and you get your stuff and then you leave. And so that's kind of what we did. But then this happened and we didn't know what it was. So I think after a couple weeks, I'm like, this is not going away. And when I looked at COVID and I looked at my symptoms, I'm like, oh, I've got COVID. Oh my God. So I called my doctor and I went to see my doctor, and they took me to a little side room just in case. And they came in all, you know,
Suited up.
alien looking with a suit and gloves and the whole kit and caboodle. And I had a throat test because they didn't have the nasals ones.
Mm-hmm.
And that came back negative.
Did they even have
And
public tests in June of 2020? I don't think there was any available out.
I think there
Just
was,
a
but
few.
not many.
Yeah.
So
Well, the
they couldn't do
hospitals
the
probably had
nose.
them.
Yeah, they couldn't do the nose test. That's unpleasant.
The
So he
up your
had to do the
brain
throat test.
Q-tip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What are you thinking, really?
Ah.
They also did what he called an antibody test.
Mm-hmm.
So he took a couple vials of blood just to see if I had COVID, if I had antibodies to it.
Right.
But all three tests came back negative. And we're like, gosh, what is that? What's happening? So that was like in June, July timeframe. Um, and then again, we didn't know what was happening because I could only walk 20 feet before I had to stop and
How did you
rest.
even get to the hospital or to your doctor to get checked
I
out when you're that? I mean, do you stop and take
I
breaks
drove.
on the you
Yes.
what? Andrew.
Yeah, I drove.
No.
Well, sitting in the car, you're driving. It's no big
I'm
deal.
only a little dizzy. It's all right.
You know. No, I wasn't dizzy.
Okay.
But it was just, any physical exertion,
Yeah, for sure.
I would get exhausted pretty quick.
But you might think it was long COVID too, right? Oh, it's just taking me a long time to get over it.
But didn't know. And so after that, I told the doctor, he goes, well, it's got to be pulmonary. It's got to be something in your lungs.
Mm.
Okay. So then I went and had an x-ray and they found some grayness and they thought, oh, you've got pneumonia. Okay. So then I come back to the doctor's office and there's fungal pneumonia and viral pneumonia and bacterial pneumonia and there's prescriptions for each one. There's not a one size kills
Sure.
everything thing. So guess what? I did all three of
At the
them.
same time,
No, you can only do one at a time for 2
oh
weeks.
gosh. So that's 6 weeks of testing treatments.
Yeah. And then I went back and got the x-rays, and my lungs were clean. They were clear.
Like, oh, you're good
But I
now.
still had my symptoms.
Oh, gosh.
And so they're like, okay, we don't know. So then I got a referral to a specialist, and I went to the pulmonologist, and she got all my x-rays and all the notes and stuff from the doctor. And she put me into, what is it? Well, the donut, where you lie down and you go
Is
into
it
the
MRI?
donut. Well, they inject the dye into you.
I don't know.
It's not an EKG. It's not an echocardiogram. It's something else. But you lay on this bed and it goes into the circular thing, and it did an entire mapping of my lungs. And so then I went in the following week, and she looked at my x-rays. She looked at the notes from that, and she's like, well, it's not your lungs. She goes, there's a little fluid in your lung, but I don't see that as a problem. She goes, some people get that. It's no big deal. She said, I think it's more cardiac based.
Which is not what you want to hear, right?
Well, by then it was late August.
Gosh.
Because, you got to wait for this. You got to wait for, most specialists now are at least 2 to 3 weeks out if you call for an appointment, which is fine. I mean, they're busy. A lot of people need to see them.
It's fine unless it's an emergency. Then it might not be so fine.
Yeah. Well, but we didn't know.
Right, totally.
And because of COVID, I was then working at home. So it was no big deal. I mean, I could sit and do my job and do my computer and be on conference calls. No one knew the wiser.
Oh, you're such a trooper, Andrew. You're like, it was no big deal. I'm working from home.
Well, the only thing that was tough was just going to bed at night. I had to sit up, and I didn't understand it. I was lucky because the room next to my office is the restroom.
It's close.
So I could just...
It's within 20 feet, so you're good. That's your
10
zone
feet,
of...
just... I'm right there. Yeah, so it was no big deal. So I tried to get to the cardiologist, and that's when I think it was late July, August, I started noticing my body was ballooning out.
You're retaining fluids.
Like I was retaining fluids, and I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense. So at one point in time, I went downstairs. I get off work at 2:30, and my partner gets off work at like 4. And I just casually made my way down with several stops to just say, could you take me to the emergency room? I need to be looked at. Oh my God. It's like, no, it's okay. Take your time. Just wait till you're done with work. I'll just make my way upstairs and I'll be ready. And so that's what we did. And we went in there, and because of COVID, you couldn't wait in the waiting room. So he had to go all the way home. And they did a quick little workup on me in the emergency room. And, gosh, what was it called? Shoot, it just went right out of my head. It wasn't heart disease, but congestive heart failure. That's what it was.
Sure.
So I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and I was given a prescription to help get the fluids out of my body because they weren't being eliminated. They were staying in the body.
Yeah.
And my foot swelled so big that I could barely put my shoe on. And we didn't know what was happening, but it was all over. And so I started taking the prescriptions, and it was working a little bit, but then it stopped completely. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to make it. I won't make it in time to see the cardiologist because my appointment was like another 2 weeks away. So the following weekend, I went back downstairs. Could you take me back to the emergency room? And then I went back upstairs.
Sorry to bother you, but
Yeah. I think I need to go. I need to go.
Is this a
But
good
go ahead and work
time?
until...
Because I might need
Yeah.
emergency medical assistance.
So I came back upstairs, and this is September, October time, right? So I'm still wearing summer shorts and a t-shirt. And
Oh, we had a nice
I
September
put on my
too,
favorite
didn't
shorts.
we? I mean,
Yeah.
weather-wise, not health-wise.
Right. Oh, it was great. It was still sunny and nice, So I had a shower, put on my favorite shorts and t-shirt, and we went to the hospital. And they said, "Oh, you were here a week ago. What's going on?" And I said, "Well, you gave me this prescription and it's not working. I'm still retaining the fluids. I don't know what to do. I don't feel well." And they said, "Okay, well, we'll keep you overnight for observation."
So, did
Uh,
they have any idea why you were retaining fluids? Were they looking at a cause for that? Or they're just like, well, let's
no,
try this and see if you feel better the second one?
that's what it was. Yeah. Well, because typically, I guess, they give this prescription to people and you're supposed to take it, and I guess it works on a lot of people. But it wasn't working on
Yeah, but
me.
there's a lot of different reasons for fluid retention. Some of it can be heart related, some of it is liver related,
Right.
right? Like, it seems like
Well, I can tell you why. Further in the story, it'll all make
I'm
sense.
listening.
Um, so they kept me overnight. And the interesting thing is, I know that you believe in angels.
Yes, I do.
And I have some really good guardian angels that took care of me that night. Because when I was there, they put me in this observation room, and the whole wall was windows. And they hooked me up with heart monitors, and I was lying on this little bed with my shorts and t-shirt on. I didn't have a blanket or anything. It was fine. It was warm in there, and there was a gentleman in the next room that was loud and obnoxious, and he started throwing things at the nurses and cussing, and everybody around was like, "Oh, just go to bed." It was like 1:30, and he was still just being belligerent with the hospital staff. So the nurse came in, and I said, "Oh, please, just take me somewhere, a broom closet. I'll stay in the broom closet." And she goes, "I know everyone's complaining." So she left, and then she came back like another half hour later, and she said, "I found a spot for you. It's a slow night in the ICU, but that's in the cardiac division of the hospital across on the other side of the building." Well, can you name a more perfect place for me to be with a heart issue than the cardiac ICU? So they wheeled me down there, and they put me in this room. They hooked me up again, and then they turned off the lights and kind of left the door a little bit open. And that was basically it.
Well, that wasn't it. I mean, you're still here. so
I'm still here.
So, okay. So you end up at the emergency room and they're like, "Oh, you're back. Well, yeah, I'm still retaining fluids. Okay, well, wait here and somebody will check on you. We're going to monitor you or whatever, right?" But
Yeah,
because of
yeah.
this belligerent guy, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm never going to get any sleep." So you get like an in with the nurse who wheels you into the cardiology section of the ICU just so that you can sleep. And then
Yes.
what happens?
That was the most unusual thing ever, because the last thing I remember was she turned the lights out, she left the room, and then I must have gone to sleep. I must have just fallen asleep. The next thing I remember was there was a woman's voice in my right ear, and I could hear this, "Oh, he's coming too." And I'm thinking, okay, that's not a normal thing you hear. Was I at a party? I mean, what's going on? And I opened my eyes, and the whole room had lights on. The lights were on. There were about 7 people around my bed, and here I am with my shirt was off. I still had my shorts on. Thank you. Um, but there were 2 guys with hair nets on and surgery scrubs. There was a lady and a gentleman in doctor jackets. And then there were like 3 or 4 nurses in blue outfits. And I'm sitting there looking at them like, what is going on? And the lady whose voice was in my ear came into my field of view, and she said, "Andrew," she goes, "we couldn't get your shorts off, so we have to cut them off." And then she turned around, she opened a drawer and grabbed her scissors, like she was going to cut my shorts off. So I sat up in the bed and I go, no. I said, you're not going to cut my shorts off. These are my favorite shorts, and I'll have you know that I wore these special to come into the hospital. I even showered before I came into the hospital, and I wore my favorite t-shirt. I said, haven't you people heard of a drawstring? So I flipped down my shorts, I undid the drawstring, and I whipped out of my shorts, and I'm naked right there on the bed, and I go, here. And I said, keep them because I'm going to want those when I leave. And they put towels on me like, oh my God.
Naked
And
patient.
yeah, some people were like looking at me like that with their
Well, you
mouths
were
open. A couple of them were
unconscious
giggling.
too, so you come to life. He's coming too, and then you just whip your clothes off.
Yeah. Well, what I didn't know at the time was that I had one of my heart attacks then. And they had just brought me back. I had passed. And they had all the people around there because they were bringing me back. The people were scrubbing up for surgery, and then they were going to wheel me out to surgery.
Well, Andrew,
But
when you come back to life, you really come back to life.
that's
Well
what they
done.
said. They're like, okay, he's back. So yeah, it was funny. A couple of them were laughing. They thought it was just hilarious that I did what I did, but you know, it was funny. So the doctor was explaining what had happened during the night I was out or passed out. And then I noticed that I couldn't focus on what he was saying. I couldn't understand it.
Mhm.
And I think they were giving me some kind of, sedative to go into
Yeah,
surgery or
probably.
something. And I finally ended up looking at the doctor and I said, I can't understand you anymore. I trust you. You're going to make the best decision for me, and I will see you after surgery. And that was kind of my message to the doctor, and then I was out. That was it.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know what happened after that. My partner had to tell me everything that he went through during that decision process.
So
And
this is maybe a
the
good
tough thing
time
was is
for us to hear
he didn't.
about, like, yeah, what was his
Yeah,
perspective while you're
he
going through
he
this?
didn't know because I had the phone number for my boss taped to my monitor,
Mm-hmm.
and I had said, hey, if anything happens, there's my boss's number, which gratefully I did that because he was able to call my manager. But everyone was wondering what's going on. Where's Andrew? You know. So he shared with me a lot of what he went through, and some of it. I know he didn't share all of it, but
So was he not able to come into the emergency room with you because of COVID restrictions? Is that what was going
correct.
on? So did he was he notified that you'd had a heart attack? Like what was
Yes.
going on from his perspective?
So what had happened was when I had that silent heart attack in June, it's believed that I blew out my mitral valve. So you have two valves in your heart, and they both help pumping blood. And I guess the mitral valve is the valve that pumps blood to your kidneys and your liver, which is what actually helps you digest your food, and any liquid gets expelled out of the body. That's why those prescriptions didn't work, is because my kidney and my livers were not getting the blood they needed to do their job. And the doctor was then wondering, he was like, how did you live from June until October? Like, I don't know. I just sat at my desk. But, that's why none of that actually worked. That's why my body wasn't eliminating those
Mm-hmm.
liquids like most normal people would.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what had happened was, um, the doctor basically said, replacing a valve is like going in and doing stents and all those other regular heart type of surgeries. A lot of the surgeries for the heart are common now. kind of like cataract surgery and other things that a lot of people get. So it's not a walk in the park by any
Hmm.
means, but it's a common surgery. It's not like I had something rare or unusual.
So those procedures
Um,
basically are a lot safer than they were 10 or 20 years
yes,
ago when they hadn't been done as frequently. Now it's one of those surgeries they have a lot of experience with. Lucky for you, right?
yeah. Well, but the tough part now was my kidneys and my liver, and I think it was my stomach and intestines had completely stopped functioning
Gosh.
100%. And so the conversation that was had between my partner and the doctor was more of, well, we know we can go in and we can fix Andrew's heart valve. That's, a simple surgery, so to speak. Um, but we can't turn on his liver and his kidneys and his intestines. If those don't come back on, he's gone. I mean, there's no reason for us to do the
So
surgery.
they were seeing that these organs weren't functioning properly, but they didn't know why. Those pieces hadn't been
Right.
connected yet, and so they had to determine whether you were even going to make it. Like, is it worth it to fix the heart when these other organs aren't working?
Exactly. I mean, that was the decision, because it's kind of like one of the pull the plug type of decisions.
Gosh.
What should we do? And so what they did is they had to have someone squeeze the little bottle to act as if my mitral valve was pumping blood. So they actually pumped blood back into my kidneys and my liver and, stomach, intestine kind of a thing. And they actually had to sit there and pump it. I don't know if it was by hand or if a machine did it, but they had to do that to get those organs the proper amount of blood. And of course, they were probably thinking, well, hey, if we start feeding them blood again, kind of like turning them off and turning them on, maybe they'll come back on again and start
Let me try
functioning.
turning it off and on again.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how it was. And so they ended up doing a test because I was intubed. I had a tube down to my stomach and a tube down to my lungs. And they fed me some food, like mushy
So were you
peas.
unconscious through all of this? Yeah,
Yes.
because you've got all those
Yeah.
tubes in you and everything. That wouldn't.
Yeah, I think they put me kind of like your father. They put me in a chemical induced
Yeah.
coma
I think they
while
have
they were
to
making.
anytime they do any kind of intubation, right? Because otherwise
Yep.
you fight it and you hurt yourself.
Yeah, and so they had to figure out what to do. They had to make a decision, and so they fed me some food. And apparently, what they said is when your kidneys and liver start
Mm-hmm.
functioning and they start filtering out your
Mm-hmm.
food, they release an enzyme in your bloodstream. And so then a day after they fed me some food, they took a blood sample. They found the enzyme.
Wonderful.
So they're
Or they
like,
wouldn't have bothered to
okay,
save you. Oh, goodness.
no, exactly. It all was on that little enzyme. If they didn't find it, I wouldn't be
Thank you,
here.
little enzyme.
Thank you.
Thank you for showing up when
So,
we needed you.
so yeah. So what ended up happening they found the enzyme. They put me in surgery. I have a mechanical valve. It sounds like a little Timex watch. It ticks all day, all night. But I guess every time I hear it, it's like, yeah, I'm alive.
So
I'm
the
alive.
little valve is electronic?
Mechanical.
Mechanical. So you hear it moving because there's metal. Is it
Hmm.
metal parts in there?
I think so. I don't know.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I call it my bionic heart valve.
Ooh, bionic heart
Do
valve.
do 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 do.
Yes, I love that.
But yeah, but that's what it was. And so the last thing I remember was the doctor telling me, what he was going to do. Then I was out, all of this happened, and you were going to read something that Tim
Yeah.
posted.
Okay, so again, Andrew and I are friends and we knew each other this year and I'd heard like you weren't well, but we didn't know if it was COVID or what. And then and of course I follow you on Facebook. And then one day I see this post on your page, right? So Andrew's posting. I'm going to read everybody what it said because this is the news that we got. It said, "Update on the patient. The doctors in the cath lab are doing everything they can to stabilize the patient. The patient is unable to receive phone calls at this time. The patient's husband has called the police to do a drive-by on the mother's house so that information can be relayed to her. It would be helpful if the brother of the patient would either call the husband for status. Please reach out to husband for additional updates. So at first I was really confused. I'm like, patient? What is all this patient? Wait a minute. His husband must have written this, right? Like, so then we figured out, okay, I understand who wrote this. This means you're in the hospital, right? They're trying to stabilize you, which means it's bad, right? Contact the family. And I was just trying not to panic. Like, oh my gosh, like, is this it for Andrew? Like, what is happening right now, you know? And so I think a lot of people must have seen that post, and like comments are filling up on there, and everybody's like, you know, prayers for you, Andrew. Of course you're not going to see it, right? But we were sending you a lot of love. But I can only imagine, like, your husband probably in an emotional panic is trying to figure out, how do I relay information? And it sounds like so technical, right? So I feel like he's very left-brained. He's like, okay, this is the information, we're going to get it out. But it totally worked, right? And we understood some of what was going on. And then I think it was just, I don't know, maybe like a couple days later, you're like, hey guys, I'm okay. And I'm like, oh my God, Andrew. And like, I didn't want to like try to call you or message you right away, because I'm like, okay, he's like recovering from a lot right now. And everybody's probably like begging you for some reassurance that you're alive and how's everything doing. So I just feel like so bad for your husband, especially for, I'm like, oh, he must have just been devastated. Like, his whole world must have just almost ended that day.
It's, you never think about that. You know, you never think anything like that would happen.
Yeah.
You know, and then all of a sudden, what do you do?
And you're young too. Like, do you mind me asking how old you are? Ish.
Young.
Okay.
I'm 56.
56. So you wouldn't expect to be having like some sort of major cardiac event, right? Like,
the doctors were like, this guy's young. What's he doing here? You know,
energetic,
they didn't
full
understand
of life, full of personality, whipping his
Yes.
shorts off in the ER.
In any hospital ER he can.
Oh, this guy again. Maybe you were the disruptive one in the lobby.
Probably. But yeah, so yeah, it was, you know, and also it's difficult. It's kind of like, you know, you hear the phrase, some people say, you know, going to your own funeral kind of thing. You know, it's difficult to see that happening and hear things. But yeah, I mean, everyone came to my aid. In the hospital, it was pretty interesting. My sister had her church. They made a quilt for me. And so I had my bed and I had this little quilt at my feet. And the nurses came in and they're like, oh, what's that? And I had to give them the story that the ladies and gentlemen at my sister-in-law's church made a quilt, and I pulled it up to keep me warm. And it was just love. Yeah. It was just love. My team at work, they wanted to send me something. And so they sent me a little stuffed animal, and it was a sloth. And so I had this little stuffed sloth sleeping on my chest with my little hospital gown on and my blanket. And so the team would come in looking at me like, whoa, dude, you know, because I had all these things from people. And I named the sloth the same name as my boss. And I was teasing him. I'm like, that's not a career-ending move, is it?
No.
He started laughing. He's like, no, we're so glad you're okay.
Yeah, that's sweet that everybody was able to, well, so many were able to kind of reach out and make you feel that love that we all had for you. And it is a miracle. It is a series of miracles that you're here today and went through so much. So you had this near-death experience. Was it during the time that you were having the heart surgery? Is that when you think?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was in the time period where I was either in the coma or that I had died twice on the table.
So
Um,
tell us more
and
about
I
that. So
ah,
you died twice
yes,
on the table, Andrew.
that's what we're talking about. That's the NDE.
Yeah.
So I think it's the similar thing as your father had mentioned. I know some people, since this event, I've gone on YouTube and I've seen other people explain their NDE, and some people see relatives, and some people are shown heaven, some people are shown other things, and they come back with that information. It wasn't like that for me. It was similar to your father. It was dark. Um, it was warm. Usually, like, when you're a little kid and you fall down or something, you do a check, right? You kind of
Like a
go,
body
do
scan.
I feel any pain
Hmm.
anywhere? Am I okay? Did I hit my head? Am I bleeding? What's going on? And nope, okay, I must be okay. So when I was there in the darkness, I did the check, and it's like, I'm okay. Wait, where am I? It's like, oh.
So
And
did you
so,
have an awareness of your body parts like when you do that scan of like am I okay? Like
no,
there was just like
I'm okay.
awareness but not physicality.
Yeah, I didn't go, oh, are my fingers okay? Are my toes okay? It was more like, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I don't feel anything. Yeah, I'm fine. Actually, I feel great. Wow, this is cool. And then I started looking around and I was in space. So it was really interesting. It's like, oh, I could see the heavens, I could see the stars. I wasn't near any particular planet at the time, like Saturn or Jupiter or anything like that, but I could see the heavens. There was nobody there. I'm like, well, isn't there anybody here? But one thing I felt um, when I did that check, and the only thing that could come to my mind was I felt this profound sense of love. And I can't tell you how that feels. There's no way to describe how that feels. Every cell, every fiber in my body, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt I was loved. It was not joy, it was not happiness, it was not contentment, it was love. You could identify it right off the bat. You knew you were loved, period.
I
And it's
I
like,
think that we have a
uh,
memory of that because I think that's what we experienced before birth. I think we have a memory of that and we miss it. And some people miss it so
yes.
bad that that feeling of being cut off from that love is just too much.
Yeah. It's amazing. Since I've come back, people have asked, "Well, do you want to go back?" Oh, yes.
Not now.
Do you want to go back, Andrew? Yes.
Anytime.
Can we go now?
You gotta wait. You're not done
Yeah,
here,
I have to
Andrew.
wait. I have to wait. So it took a few moments, but the next thing that I saw, or I don't know if I should say I saw or was shown, I don't know. Um, but the next thing that I saw was, I don't know if you watch, Carl
Hmm.
Sagan and the planets, or you see things, but it was like I saw a planet with the sun behind it. So, the planet's rotating and you're looking at the dark side, and usually you see the lights of the cities, as the globe goes by, and you're like, oh, okay, well, there's Africa, and okay, South America's going to come up in a minute, and you know the shapes, you know your geography. Um, and so I was watching this going, wow, this is wait a minute. I couldn't make out the continents.
Mm.
And I was looking at it and I'm like, I don't know where this is. Well, and I just watched
So was
it.
it blue?
And
Was
I'm
it
like,
blue and green like Earth, but the land masses were different?
well, I couldn't see it because it was all
Oh, I see.
dark. It was the dark side. It was all
Mm.
black.
Were there lights, like city lights?
They, yes. So it kind of like lit up, but it didn't make the same continents I was used
Mm.
to. And then I looked and I was like, wait a minute, the sun has a blue color. It isn't our golden yellow
Mm-hmm.
sun. And I'm like, oh, I want to go down there. What's down there? I couldn't go. I couldn't go. And I thought, well, that is really cool. And I was just watching that. I thought that was the most interesting thing in the world to see. Um, and then I went to another one, same thing, different lights with another yellow sun behind it, but it wasn't Earth. I don't know. I don't know why I was shown that,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's basically to say that there are a lot of beings here in this universe,
Yeah.
you know, um, a lot of different people that are there, souls, people connected to the one
Mm-hmm.
source. I thought it was interesting. Um, I guess the most profound thing was what happened next to me. Um, it's hard to describe, but I went into a sun. So I felt what it was like to be a sun. And the sun has a heartbeat.
Mm.
I don't know if you know that, but it has a pulsing heartbeat. And I felt what it was like. I have to close my eyes so I remember. I felt what it was like to give off heat, to give off light, and pulsate with that. It then occurred to me, well, wait a minute. If you have things going around you, then you're giving that heat and that light to planets that go around you. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of cool. That's really cool. I like that. Um, and then I came out of that. I was in space for a little while because I wanted to, at that point in time, I'm like, okay, I want to see everything now because I'm very curious about stuff like that. I mean, when I leave here, I want to
Yeah.
travel. I want to go see things. I want to see people. I want to see stars. I want to see all
Or
those
see them again.
cool
Who
places.
knows? Maybe whatever
Exactly.
you were seeing, you had some kind of connection to. Either,
Yeah, I don't
either
know.
with the If you've ever heard the concept of like soul groups, like what if part of your soul group is living other lives in the universe, you know? I think
Hmm.
it's really short-sighted to assume that we're the only planet in an endless universe that could support life.
Exactly.
So who knows? Certainly could be things over there. Also, like, the concept of time is fluid, past, present,
Right.
future.
That's the other thing I experienced was when I was there, it I wasn't afraid of time. Like I wasn't afraid of my partner. It was kind of like, well, yeah, I'm gone, but as soon as I turn around, he's going to be right there because past, present, and future are all the same. It isn't linear like yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's all the same. So, how you view and experience time is completely different. And I knew that, well, okay, yeah, he'd be sad for a day or two in my
Yeah.
mind because I would turn around and, oh, he's here. Great. Hey, let's go over there. It wouldn't be like that. Um, the other thing, too, and I think when you and I first chatted about this, was you learn what's really of value to you. I love my truck. I love my house. I love the little things. I love my drum. I love my little cards. But they came from Earth and they're going to go back to
Yeah.
Earth. What I really found of value was the love that I had with other people, the experiences we shared, the connections that you make with people, um, how you can really impact somebody's life by just doing something little, like looking them in the eyes and saying, "Hi, how are you?" or "Good morning," or holding a door open for
Mm-hmm.
somebody, or just a gesture of kindness because you don't know what that person's going through, and you do it just to be kind. And that experience with the sun and giving light to everybody around you and giving warmth, um, really personified that to me. That, yeah, I am kind of a little sun in my own little
Hmm.
universe because I do have that impact on everybody I see each and every day. And it makes me think, how did I impact their life today? Was it a positive thing? Did I have a bad time? Did I make a wrong decision? I fell on my face again. I didn't say something right, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's actually changed my perspective in that way, to be mindful of, or try to, as best as I can, the things I say and do that can impact somebody else's life.
There's a quote from Hafiz. It says, "Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, 'You owe me.' Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky." That's a quote that Wayne Dyer used to share, one that he loved. And when I hear you talking about that experience of being the sun, that's what I imagine, is this sense of radiating love, the kind of love that nurtures everything around you without agenda, right? Without
Hmm.
even expectation of anything in return. That you give because that is your nature. And I think
Right.
maybe we are sort of the microcosm in that bigger example, in the macrocosm, that this sun that has this heartbeat, this pulse, which I didn't know that until you told me, and I looked it up, and you're absolutely right. There is a heartbeat, there is a pulse in the sun. And then, scientists have discovered this electromagnetic field that comes out from our own heart, right? That we
Right.
are radiating an energy in a way that's measurable, not just because this is something that we've been talking about in spiritual terms for thousands of years. And I feel like science is starting to catch up to some of these concepts. So I don't need science to prove it to me, but it's really interesting that, like, we can see, we measurable energy coming radiate off of us, and we feel that when we're, you know, in connection with someone, even passing a stranger on the street, you feel the energy of that person. So it's so important, the message that you brought today about that sense of kindness, and that you don't know what somebody else is going through. And like I've been saying lately, everybody is going through something. Everybody is
Yeah.
always going through something. It's this illusion which is emphasized by Instagram and Facebook and whatever else, right? Social media, that our lives tend to look like this glossy magazine cover where everything's perfect and everything's happy. And you can look at somebody's Instagram page and they look like they're living their best life, but really they could be struggling with terrible, terrible things. Whether that's
Right.
mental health struggles or health struggles or family drama or who knows. And it's like, we're not alone in that. And I think it's so important that we share it. That's one of the things I love about you sharing this story about the like what you were going through in 2020, because it wasn't just, oh, I almost died but I survived and here I am. Like, there's so much more that I think is really relatable to something's going on with my body. I don't really understand it. I'm doing all the right things. I'm going to the doctors, and then it ends up like escalating to something that was really profound. And
Yeah.
if there is a silver lining in all of this, is that I think it was really transformative for you.
Yeah.
So you had this experience with being out in space, which um, I like to tell people that you live in a sea of love, that you're surrounded by love.
Yes.
And it'd be like a fish going, "Where is the ocean? What is water?" When it's actually in it, surrounded by it, you can't be apart from it. It's like the fish is one with the ocean and is so much in it, doesn't even realize it's all around them. But I do think that it's not easy for us to feel what's there for us. But I think that what you experienced in that near death experience with that feeling of love that you look so eager to oh, it's going to be so wonderful to be back there to experience that again. Like I I hope that we can at least have moments of that, while we're here on this earth. So
Yeah.
how
It's definitely.
go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry. I was gonna say it definitely has changed my perspective on things. Um, I don't. I try not to take things to heart as much as I used to. I don't fear death. I'm kind of excited in a way. I want to go back there. But I know there's a proper time and a proper place. I'm here for a specific purpose. I'm extremely transparent. If somebody has questions or even people at work wanted to talk about this, I said, well, I'm open. Ask any question you want. Because I think this is a teaching moment for each of us. Um, I don't know if sharing what I've seen and experienced will help anybody or somebody in particular. Maybe they're going through something. Um, so I figure it's one of those things that you just kind of have to share, even though it may not be comfortable at times, or it may be something personal. But I think that's how we all grow,
Hmm.
and I think that's how we all get better together.
Some of the things that you learned while you were in that space, like you talk about past, present, future all being one. So does that mean that you never feel disconnected from anyone or anything?
Correct.
Except for the
Yes.
stuff, right? The stuff that comes from the earth and goes back to the earth.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's not yours anyway. It's like on
Yeah.
loan. It's like, well, I never really needed it. It satisfied the need when I was there, but I certainly don't need
It's
it
like the
now.
reference section at the library. You can only use it while you're at the library, right? But it's
Yeah.
like enjoy it while you have it and then let it go because it was never yours to begin with. Dr. Dyer used to say he keeps a suit in his closet with the pockets cut off because it reminds him that, he's not taking anything with him. And
Yeah.
that's hard, I think, because we have these mementos that we place a lot of value on, mostly because we have memories tied to them. And
Hmm.
I think it's hard to go, well, I get to keep the memories. I don't need to have the stuff. But at some point, you have to, like, we don't have a choice. At some point,
Right.
we have to let it all go. And, probably it's a moving into something greater. Yeah.
Well, it's a shift from things to your
Yeah.
heart. So now that we know that you could say the other
Hmm.
side is all about love and all about our connections to other people,
Hmm.
right? I would say that your investment, instead of it being things, would be
Yeah.
people, experiences, your connection. What you treasure as a memento is that relationship with, your son, your father, your husband, your wife, your cousin, people that you take time right there in the moment to chat with, and maybe you learn something from them, or you teach them something. It's just something that you invest
Hmm.
in. So if you're an investor, I would invest in those relationships and those connections, because those last, like, what did I say? Forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah. And forever's a long time. So
So,
invest in
and
relationships and experiences, and then we won't have regrets, right? I think the last couple of years with everything that we've been through and so much changed and so much was sort of taken away and the things that we took for granted maybe weren't available
mhm,
anymore. I think we're in a good place right now for reevaluating our priorities. So this is a timely message that
yes,
you're bringing to us about prioritizing, being kind to everybody, developing relationships with others, listening to their stories and their wisdom, and sharing experience with them. And like my kids are young, and they grow so fast, right? I feel like the thing with little kids is they show you the passage of time. because we don't change as
Right.
quickly anymore, so it's easier to kind of turn a blind eye to how many years it's been. But a year is a long time for a 5-year-old, and they don't look the same, they don't act the same, they don't talk the same. And my challenge as a mother is always kind of keeping up with where they're at. So I'm constantly adapting to, like, be where they are, but it keeps me present. It keeps me in the moment, and I that's good for all of us, right? Because if we're always thinking about where we're going to get someday, or how much stuff we're going to accumulate, oh, I'm going to save up and I'm going to have the nicest car that I've been dreaming of. Well, maybe we dream about other things that are things that we can enjoy today. The future
Yeah,
is promised to no
exactly.
one, right? Do
Hmm.
you think that when we die is predetermined?
I would say that we have different exit
Mm.
points because I think free will comes into play. Um, I think that when we come down with a plan. There are certain lessons we have to learn, certain experiences we have to go through. Something's good, something's bad. Um, but that's what we are here to learn. I think this is school for us. We're heavenly creatures in earth bodies. That's what we are. Um, but I think that because we have free will, we can choose to go down this path or go down that path. We can choose to be best friends with this person or maybe this person. And I think that there are exit points for us. I don't think it's clear, cut and dry. Oh, Andrew's going to die on this day at this time, at this second. I don't think it's like that. I think that it could be. Well, if Andrew doesn't eat right, then he's going to go down this path,
Yeah.
and his exit point's going to be there. Well, if Andrew does eat right, exercise, and does this, well, his exit point could be
Yeah.
here, right? So I think it's we do have exits, but I think it's a lot of it's based on the choices and free will that we have.
Yeah. So it's
So
important, the decisions that we're making. They do matter. Um,
yes,
a lot of people talk about, like, taking charge of your life and, like, I'm gonna manifest things. I do love the word manifest. I'm not gonna lie, but but the way that I see it now is that we have incredible influence over our own lives. That it is a co-creative
yes,
process, and so I don't feel like it's about taking control. It's more like making choices to go with the flow that feels right to you. So
right,
has your understanding of what happens after we die, has that changed since your NDE? So
dramatically.
what do you think happens now?
Well, I think that when we get to our exit point, I think that there is a life review. I think there is a life review. I don't think it's what people may have in their mind. Like, for instance, I was taught a life review is kind of like you sit in a little movie theater and you see your whole life from beginning to ending,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's it. What I've come to understand is it's more in depth than that. You know, if it's true that we are here and we are to experience life and make the choices and the free will that we make, learn the lessons we have by going through life, whether we're born a male or a female, we're born on this continent or that continent, we're born in this religion or that religion, or a whole bunch of different things. We experience disease or we experience heartache, or all of those. It's extremely complex. um, I think in the end it's just we're here. It's again, I get back to the schoolroom. I mean, that's the thing I have in my mind. I'm here to experience all of it. I'm here to experience the feelings, the good feelings and the bad feelings. If you mentioned mental health before, um, and I do think that sometimes we're supposed to feel
Yeah.
down and we're supposed to go through it and, to use another analogy, be a little piggy in the mud. So gotta be depressed today.
That's a
Darn it.
much cuter visual. Be a little piggy in the mud.
You can't cheer me up. I want to be down. And you just sit in it, and hopefully you have loving friends that will hold space for you while you're just a little piggy in the mud, and then, oh, wait a minute. There's a different way to do this. I think I can do something different. Change your thoughts, change your life.
Beautiful tie-in. Thank you, Andrew.
Right? Right?
I think that we came here because we wanted to participate and we wanted to try things and we wanted to see how things would work. And I picture it, if you're a Star Trek fan, I picture it a little bit like, going into a hollow suite or something. But we're sort of controlling the hollow suite, or we're causing things to happen and to show up or to shift based on, what's going on up here. And that I think maybe from a spirit, maybe it's more observational, that we're not sort of in a body having this different, it's like smaller, more concentrated experience. It's almost like if you take soul and then you you condense it into this little point that has like a body and can manipulate things in a limited but very specific way. But then we're here and we're like, oh, what would I do if I was alive at this time? What kind of person would I be? How would I handle that situation? Because I have this feeling that I do believe that we chose to be here when we're here, and with a lot of the circumstances and a lot of the lessons, right? But I think that I really underestimated the emotion and the physicality and being tired and hungry and all of these things. I think it's just oh yeah, this would be really interesting. Oh yeah, I'm going to do that. This is going to be neat. But I think that we come here to experience and play, maybe even more than learn. But everything that we're doing, we're learning, right? But we get to try our hand in it, and it's almost like we're developing ourselves through doing. I don't want to say learning on the job, because it's not a job, but it's more like It's more like being in the game of life. Not that you're trying to win, but just to put yourself in there and what would I do? Would I make that shot? Would I help the teammate that's crying? What would I do if I had my chance and this is our chance? I love what Esther Hicks talks about, of us being on the cutting edge of awareness, of expansion, that we are part of this spiritual unity of beings, but we're sort of on the front lines, pushing the envelope. And I think the thoughts and the feelings that we have to what's happening in our lives and in the world right now collectively go into some sort of bank that we all learn from and we all grow from.
Yeah, I was going to say, just hearing you describe that, what visual came into my mind was like going to a travel agency and picking up a brochure of, oh, this looks great, and you open it. Oh, and I can do this and this and this, and oh, yeah, this looks great. Oh, yeah, book me for this one. Honey, do you want to go do this one in February? This would be great, And then you get down here and you're like, wait, the food doesn't look like that. It's different. Oh,
yeah.
no.
Oh, it's raining. Oh.
What? But that's not what the brochure said.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, darn.
And going along with that sort of hollow suite concept, I thought it was really interesting what you said about you weren't worried about what was going to happen to your husband if you died. If that was your point, you knew that it was just going to be a blink and you'd be together, and it wasn't going to be something that either of you were going to I guess feel sad about ultimately. And it's so funny because the experience that I have from my father in spirit is that we're never separate. He's I'm Daddy, I wish you were here. And he's like, well, where would I go? Right? And I'm like, well, I don't know. You tell me, right? But I have this feeling that to him, we haven't been separated. There hasn't been a separation. Right. And the thing that I imagine in my mind, and this is probably just to help me from my limited human perspective, it's probably way more complicated than this, but I'm imagining that the people that we have love relationships with, right? Like our families, for example. I picture us sitting in a room somewhere, like out there, up there, with like virtual reality goggles on. And we're all sitting like side by side. Like you're all on a couch or something, right? You're all sitting side by side and you pop these virtual reality goggles on. Some people jump into the game a little bit earlier. Some people jump out of the game a little bit, sooner or
Hmm.
later than the other one. That's like birth and death, right? Like my dad came here before me and now it's my turn and I'm having my experience with it. And I've still got my goggles on, but he's sitting right next to me going, oh, like, she's going to be done with that game in no time and we're going to go, like, do
Yeah.
whatever. And that's such a comforting thought to me. And I hope it's comforting to somebody who's listening today that, like, maybe those people that you've lost, you haven't really lost them. Maybe you're sitting right next to
No.
them. Like, the real you, the whole you is still in contact. I think it's more than that, even. I think they live within us. There isn't a way to separate um, the heart of it.
Yeah, I guess another thing I can tell people is that you really have no idea how much support and love you have. I mean, people will say, "Oh yeah, my dad's watching over me or my mom is watching over me." Oh no. You have mom, you have dad, you've got cousins, you've got
Mm-hmm.
grandparents, you've got great grandparents, you have angels. You have a whole team with pom poms cheering you
Yeah.
on every
Yeah.
day because they know what you're going through. They know you still have your goggles on. So, they're over there. And again, up there, there's only
Mm-hmm.
love. There's no jealousy or hatred or, gossipy or any of that yucky stuff. All that's earth based. And when you're there, it's not part
Mm-hmm.
of you. So they're looking at you through the eyes of love, and they're like, "Yay, she
Yeah.
did it today. Woohoo, you
Yeah, like a
rock.
whole
High
team of
five."
cheerleaders. And I think they really want to help us.
It's
But we
awesome.
have to like
Yes,
be like, hey, like, like come into this space and what do you think about what's going on right now? Because they have a different perspective,
exactly.
which is really valuable when we get this tunnel vision of our problems in life, but there's more going on than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one more thing that I wanted to touch on
Uh-oh.
that you started to talk about, which was that life review. And I wanted to
Yes.
share sort of what my perception of that is, because again, it's all guesses, isn't it? And then
Yeah.
ask you again about yours. But I sort of imagine a life review as after we die, that we are sort of gifted this awareness of how we impacted others, good, bad, or indifferent. How did what you did when you were 7, 17, 70 impact this person, that cashier, your mother, your son, like whatever it was? How did what you were doing make them feel? What was the impact on that? What was the impact on people's lives? What was the impact of your presence on earth at this time? Because it's like the butterfly effect, right? We think we're this tiny little nothing, but we are integrated into what's happening in the world at this time. So how do we impact it? And then I think rather than being punished, right, for the things that caused pain to others, I think we are given the awareness of the pain that we caused others, and we probably feel that too. And I think what we have is an opportunity to see things differently. Like, this is what that felt like, right? This is what that felt like for the other person. It could have been done differently. Maybe you could have done this or maybe you could have done that. And I think that sounds like more of a learning, like a
Right.
coaching, but it almost feels self-directed. It doesn't feel like God is going to come and punish me and be like, you did this, you go to hell, or
Right.
like, oh, you get 10 points off for that. It's more like, here's an awareness of the impact that you had, good, bad, and indifferent, with like, oh gosh, I should have called my mom more, or like if I had just sat and played with my kid that day instead of moving boxes around or whatever. Like, this is how things would have, like, even little things. And I feel like because, like, there's no past, present, future, it's all happening at once. Like, I feel like
Correct.
it's just this sort of like a moment where you see it, you feel it, you experience it from different perspectives, and you gain some understanding from that. So what's
I
your take
agree.
on the life review?
No, I agree with that because I think because if time reacts to as past, present, and future, you have all the time you need to look at your life.
Yeah.
Every single thing you did, the tone in your voice, the eyeball glance you gave somebody, the attitude,
Hmm.
and walking off and doing your thing. I mean, we're
Or
all
the
learning
values that
here.
were maybe misplaced and like caused more suffering to yourself that didn't need to be
Exactly.
that way.
The choice you made.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that wasn't a very good choice, Andrew.
Well,
Oops.
Anita Morjani says there is no hell, and I don't think there's a hell
Right.
either, but I do think maybe there can be. I mean, if there is a hell, I think it's self-imposed. It's almost like you get sort of stuck
Hmm.
in the dark feelings that you had or you caused somebody else, and you need to, I don't know, work through that somehow. But this idea that I have of life review, I feel like it takes the fear out of what so many people are taught of, like, God is this, punishing man on the throne, and I think God is love, and he's, one with all of us.
Yeah, me too. I don't think that, again, back to when I was in Sunday school, just this little,
Hmm.
you're going to be punished forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Good for
I
you
think
for
we're
being
here
the
to learn.
scurvy elephant, Andrew.
um, I think we're here to learn. I think we're here to grow. Um, I think we're here to teach each other different things. Um, and again, because we all have different experiences in our lives, we have that vantage point to be able to do
Hmm.
that. Um, so I think it's important for us to share quite a bit from the heart, um, on exactly what's important, what we've gone through, and some of it isn't pretty. It's not meant to be
Yeah.
pretty, um, but there's lessons there, and it can help other people greatly. Um, Maybe again, getting back to they could be going through something you don't know about.
And probably are.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, you're doing some of that here today, sharing from the heart, sharing, some details that happened to you in your life and how it impacted you, and, you know, potentially controversial. Here's what I experienced, in my NDE, that some people hold very strongly to their religious beliefs that might not be comfortable. But you know what? This is a spiritual podcast, so everybody's just, they get it.
yeah.
You
Just
guys
jump
get
in.
it.
It's
We
okay.
know. So, what's your spiritual practice like now? Because you've been through a lot since January of 2020. Like what do you do now spiritually?
Well, I start off the day every morning as soon as I open my eyes. Gratitude for one more day. Gratitude fills the day because I may not be here to experience this, to experience my partner, my family, my sister-in-law, my brother, my
Yeah.
mom, all these people that I love and I hold dear. Um, so I start off with gratitude. Um, I try and find time to center myself, to do a check-in, to live more in the moment. I know that's a cliche nowadays, but it's kind of like, hey, this is a great day. I'm really liking
Yeah.
this. It's rainy out. Oh, I love the rain. It's sunny out. Oh, I love the sun. Kind of like I'm experiencing this right now. I really
Yeah,
love
coming back
this.
into the
This is pretty
senses
cool.
instead of just getting lost in, like, fears about the
Right.
future, or, emotions about the past.
I try not to watch
Mm.
news. I do get caught up a little bit in some of the politics, but I try and limit that. Um, I find that I'm looking more at nature things. When I was in the hospital, the one thing I thought was really weird, and the nurses commented on it, was they give you the little channel and the little clicker, and I couldn't watch anything but the Nature
Mm.
Channel. So it would show, the oceans, and it would show the fish going in the reef, and then it would pan to the forest and the little critters running around, and then it would go to the desert, and you'd see all these different um, type of climate zones, so to speak, of the earth and everything. And I did change the channel to news, and I was watching it, and I couldn't get my brain into it. It was like, what is this? It just felt really weird. Um, so I think right now I'm more drawn to the outdoors, to doing things a little bit more
Hmm.
naturally, um, seeking more guidance from the inside, having conversations. It's really goofy. I have conversations with myself. It's pretty funny. At least I think so. But
As long as you make yourself laugh,
yeah,
that's what matters.
well, and the value of
Yeah.
humor in a lot of things. I'm noticing that in my professional life, at work, since I've come back, a lot of people kind of see me as a sage in a way. They come to me for, you know, advice, for help on
Hmm.
things, and some of it's not work, some of it's home too. It's kind of like, okay, so this is new. I'm a therapist now? Is that what I'm here for? I'm a therapist. Okay, well, let's grab it and
Hmm.
go.
So, has it been hard to reintegrate into normal life and work life and all of that when it seems like everything kind of feels different and your perspective is shifted and you've had this life changing, not only, you know, health catastrophe, but kind of deepening your spiritual awakening? Is it hard to reintegrate into like water cooler conversation and all of that?
Yes and no. I find that this is going to sound, in a way, kind of rude. I don't mean it to be. Um, but I found myself developing new relationships and letting go of older relationships that may not be where I'm aligned with
Yeah.
anymore, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Some of the conversations I kind of steer clear from because I don't find that they're kind.
Mm.
I
They're not
don't
coming from the right
think that,
place, or there's not a heart
yeah,
connection to it.
I see through some of the fakeness in people, and I don't have any tolerance for it. It's like, oh, is that something bad I brought back with me? I don't want to talk to this
Hmm.
person, but it's more of, what's that phrase? The vibe is your tribe,
Oh,
or
your
something
vibe
like
attracts
that.
your tribe. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm finding that to be very
Oh, my
true.
tribe is
I'm
growing and I
making,
just love it. Like having conversations with you and the way that we connected. It's really, it starts because we put ourselves out there and we try new things and we explore like what's of interest. So, yeah, it makes sense that things are changing for you for sure.
so even work, it's just, it's very
Mhm.
unique. I never would have imagined that work would be like
Yeah.
this. So,
You're bringing your present moment awareness into the office, and I'm sure people feel
yes.
that, and that can be, I think you can be an example, and I'm sure that you are. So, if there was one thing that you wanted people to get from everything you shared today,
Oh boy.
one takeaway, what would you share?
Be kind to other people and share from your heart. That's two, but I'll make it one.
Well, the kindness is coming from the heart, so that totally makes sense. And what's the
Because
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, because you take it with you, it's a connection you have with other people, and you'll find out in your life review exactly how they
Mm.
felt.
You're gonna find out sooner or later, so make it good, right? Make it good. What's the best way for people to reach you?
So we talked about this. Um, I'm very transparent. I'm not shy. If you want to get a hold of me, my email address is my first and last name. It's Andrew Thiessen at
All
comcast.net.
right, you heard it here. And of course, anyone is welcome to reach out to me if you have questions as well, and I can get them over to Andrew. So, Andrew, I am just so excited that we found the time to get together and have this conversation and go more into depth into what happened with you. And I just remember the first time that I saw you on Zoom, right? Because we're still in the pandemic. First time that I saw you on Zoom after all of this, and I was just like, oh my gosh, Andrew, you're alive. Like, it's a miracle. Like, what in the world happened? And getting the chance to not only, hear it directly from you, but in a way that we can share it with others and that they're going to get something from this as well. I just want to thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
And for all our listeners, thank you for following Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life and telling your friends about it. The full video for this episode will be available to my subscribers on Patreon. You can get all the links and more details about this podcast at nadiadelacruz.com. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Namaste.